Once again, we will have to destroy Berlin and enter this godforsaken city. Once again, we will have to enter Paris. Once again, we will have to liberate Vienna.
While Donald Trump is busy trying to invent a peace plan that would please Moscow and maybe earn him a Nobel Prize along the way, Russia is not offering any compromises at all. Kremlin propagandists are screaming at the top of their lungs, "No peace, we are ready for a lone war and we want all of our so-called goals." And just to raise the stakes, Russian TV has already decided that NATO is basically at war with Russia. Because when reality is not dramatic enough, you just abrogate the storyline. New week, new nonsense from Russia. I'm Sophia and this is Spin Snipers, where we turn Kremlin drama into quick reality checks. The longer Trump's peace plan is discussed and tweaked, the more Russia starts to boil. One thing is clear, they are not ready for peace. Their list of demands keeps growing, and concessions? Forget it. Honestly, here in Kyiv, not Washington, we're not expecting anything different.
All this verbal chaff came in from the West. Here we play by the rules, there we don't. Here it's territory. There it's not territory. That cannot work for us. For us, the Constitution has priority. And our Constitution clearly defines where our state borders lie. That's the case, isn't it? And nowhere in our Constitution is there any provision for acting like this. We're not Ukraine. We have a constitutional court. And Ukraine doesn't.
Translation from Kremlin speak to human language. After the full-scale invasion, Russia has already rewritten its constitution to include all 4 Ukrainian regions: Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia and Kherson. And Crimea already theirs, obviously. So, according to the logic of Moscow's court gestures, there is only one way forward: keep fighting. Why? Because whatever written in the constitution is law, and who cares about the reality, borders or international norms?
Therefore, it doesn't matter what they are talking about over there. They have zero legal grounds. They are acting outside the legal framework. We, on the other hand, can act only on the basis of the existing constitution. How else could it be? There is no other way.
It's honestly weird that the Americans even entertain these manipulations. What even is Russia's constitution? At its core, it's just a piece of paper that the dictator can rewrite on a whim. Wanted, insert someone else's territory. Wanted, give yourself eternal rule and declare yourself as the one and only irreplaceable leader. A country that has long turned into dictatorship yet tries to play democracy and rule of law for the West looks absurd. Especially when you consider Solovyov openly threatening to bomb Ukrainian cities and continue the occupation in the southern Ukraine. This, folks, is what wanting peace looks like, Russian style.
I strongly recommend that everyone living in the port areas of Odessa and Mykolaiv urgently sell their property and leave. Urgently. All port infrastructure must be destroyed. All of it. Completely wiped off the face of the earth. It must not exist. Ukraine, for the time being, until we have taken back all our lands, must forget what the sea is. And only later, when we have reclaimed our lands, reached Transnistria, and fully returned Novorossiya to Russia, then we will rebuild everything anew.
Meanwhile, the Russian dictator is busy painting a picture of victory for his cronies, just to make sure no one tries to push him off the throne. And of course, he sprinkles this nonsense into peace talks, hoping to bargain for something, anything really.
We understand that by creating this fortified area around Siversk, and in Siversk itself, the enemy was counting on us getting bogged down in the assault on the city, thereby slowing our advance. That did not work out for the enemy. While for you, everything turned out exactly as planned. Everything you intended was achieved.
Meanwhile, while Putin is busy inventing some victories, the Ukrainian armed forces are calling his claims out. Yes, fighting is ongoing. Yes, the Russians are trying to push forward, but the city remains under Ukrainian control.
In the Sloviansk direction, the city of Siversk remains under the control of the armed forces of Ukraine. The enemy is trying to infiltrate Siversk in small groups, taking advantage of unfavorable weather conditions, but most of these units are being destroyed on the approaches. The Ukrainian Defense Forces' counter-sabotage measures continue.
On the top of their victories at the front, Russian propagandists are cooking up another story. Apparently, the UK is already at war with them. Oh, and just to remind you, a NATO country and one that happens to have nuclear weapons.
We see that Britain has now entered the war against Russia by sending its armed forces to conduct combat operations. And that Overton window, which was demonstrated to us after the death of a British serviceman with the telling surname Hooley. I would also ask, what should we expect next?
Funny question, does the UK even know it's supposedly at war with Russia? On December 9th, a British Armed Forces soldier was fatally wounded far from the front lines while testing new defensive capabilities in Ukraine. Meanwhile, North Korea's military involvement in the war against Ukraine, neither Russia nor Kim Jong-un are hiding that. And by the way, around 2,000 of them have died.
In military operations against our country, we know exactly which unit Hooley served in. So what are we supposed to expect? Let's strike there. Oh, that's a provocation. That's terrible. What is Solovyov calling for? And you want us not to pay attention? This is precisely the Overton window.
Meanwhile, those who promised to take Kyiv in 3 days are now on their 4th year of a full-scale invasion and still have not. And yet, Russian talking heads are back threatening Europe. Apparently, they are concerned about the speed at which European countries are strengthening their defense. Funny how that lines up exactly with Russia invading a peaceful neighbor country with missiles and tanks.
The war is going to be a long one. Even if now, thanks to Trump's efforts, our just demands, formulated by the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of our country back in December 2021, are met, Europe has gathered such momentum that it cannot help but erupt into war. Britain is speaking openly. The target is Leningrad in order to create tension. A German armor division is also being moved there. And 1858, once again, we will have to destroy Berlin and enter that God-forsaken city. Once again, we will have to enter Paris. Once again, we will have to liberate Vienna.
Of course, the Russians' intentions are totally pure and sincere. They just dream of seeing Europe fall apart. And neutrally, they've already found the perfect ally. After Trump's Politico interview and his new national security strategy, packed with criticism of Europe, Kremlin clowns simply clapped their hands in delight.
If Trump has such a proposal to take part in certain projects, why not play along and jointly dismantle Europe piece by piece, especially since there is historical experience to draw on?
There is enormous scope for cooperation, so to speak. I'm not even talking about some joint Elon Musk flight to Mars, but the money from a Trump-Putin fund could certainly be spent on something rational. That's why it seems to me that these attempts by Europe's so-called war party, and even more so by Ukraine, to claim that America and Russia are eternal enemies forever and ever, are doomed to fail.
I always thought Russia has considered America its eternal enemy since the Cold War. Back in Biden's time, the US was practically hell on earth for Moscow. And now, bam! Suddenly everything's changed. But the main goal is clear. The Kremlin dreams of splitting the US and Europe apart. In Moscow, they've already signed in that US should slap sanctions on the European Union.
By the way, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point the Americans impose sanctions on the bureaucratic leaders of the European Union. Refuse to recognize them and start imposing sanctions against von der Leyen, Ursula. It's entirely possible.
I think they're already close to that, considering that the EU just fined Musk.
And there are hints of this in the new updated security strategy.
Yes.
And of course, the main topic of the week, when elections will take place in Ukraine. The Russians are not dreaming about them out of some love for democracy. Thinking Moscow actually cares about democratic principles would be naive. Their goal is to exploit the situation to destabilize Ukraine further, so predictably push their own candidates and allies into power. Essentially, this is exactly what Moscow has been doing all along.
So I'm asking, are we going to hold elections according to the Constitution or according to understandings? If it's according to understandings, it can be done in 3 days. You can organize an electronic version, violate all the rules, and once again end up with either Zelensky or Zaluzhny, which is a case of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Yes, again, pro-war. It's like trying to replace the commandant of a concentration camp. It doesn't make life any easier for the prisoner.
And what difference does it make to us, who will be in charge in the Reich?
Even if Ukraine holds presidential elections, the sovereign choice of the Ukrainian people won't satisfy Russia, unless, of course, the president turns out to be Yanukovych again or Putin's buddy Medvedchuk. Russia's goal has always been the same. If they can't fully occupy Ukraine, then turn into a puppet state like Belarus. But that option stopped working for them long ago. Since 2022, they've been set on the complete destruction of Ukraine.
We must clearly understand that Zelensky's maneuvers are transparent and obvious, and they are always aimed at one thing: deceiving Russia. He is convinced that he will manage to deceive Russia and force us, under one pretext or another, to grant the Ukrainian Nazis a 2 or 3 month pause for preparing elections, without understanding that we do not care how he conducts those elections. What matters to us is the very fact that elections take place. For us, it is extremely important that this be understood. For us, the issue is not only, and not so much, Zelensky himself. What we require is the denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine. And that means that the entire structure of the Ukrainian Nazi authorities must be dismantled.
It's hilarious hearing Russia suddenly act like it's a more democratic country than Ukraine. Continuing the election topic, they could not think of anything better than to hold up their own half-baked state as an example.
Trump said that 82% want it. This is his answer to the Europeans, who say only the people of Ukraine can decide whether elections are needed. Trump says, here you go, Ukraine has spoken, and if they want elections. We have held elections under shelling in Belgorod and the Kursk region. That didn't stop us, and no one declared any ceasefire. On the contrary, we held elections in Donbass and referendums in Zaporizhzhia and Kherson under intense shelling.
Elections, referendums, sure, I totally believe it. The kind of election where the only candidate, Putin, gets 100% of the votes and the opposition is alone gone or rotten in the prison. And referendums, that's a whole other story. Occupy a territory, point a gun at the locals who are, of course, terrified and just want to survive, and ask, do you want to become part of Russia? And even if some Ukrainians said no, how many? We'll never know, because the Russians don't count votes, they just draw the numbers they need. Meanwhile, Russian TV has reached peak cynicism, inventing ways to justify strikes that kills dozens of Ukrainians.
They are trying to do this now. What is their task? They are provoking us into delivering a powerful strike. We deliver that powerful strike, and then they will show Ukrainians. And it doesn't matter whether they are actually Ukrainians who were they'll dig them up from nearby cemeteries, or themselves. We have seen every form of provocation over the course of this war.
These words are so shocking, it's hard even to comment. They just launch drones and missiles that kill civilians and many children. And then these bastards say, not us, you made it all up. They lie the same way about Bucha, where this so-called liberator army stripped people of normal life, their homes and basically their right to live.
The residents of Bucha, whom they killed and then presented as victims of Russia. The missile strikes on railway stations carried out by them. Missiles shot down by their clumsy air defense systems and falling onto their own hospitals. We have seen it all. Absolutely all of it. Therefore, our task is, without paying attention to the West's reaction, to continue calmly and methodically, doing real military work.
Well, America dreams of talks, Russian TV is spewing nonsense. Hopefully, by now, everyone gets the Russians' true intentions. That's it for today. While the Russian propaganda machine keeps running, we'll keep exposing their lies. I'm Sofia and this was Spin Snipers. Stay curious, stay skeptical and don't fall for the spin.